my sweet little virtual friends. Welcome back to Social Studies. Today we are focusing on two more wars and the space race. Now, you're probably thinking, what are you talking about two more wars? We just got done talking about World War I and then World War II. And there's more wars, you're telling me? Yes, I am telling you. So at the end of World War II, a whole bunch of more stuff happened. But before I get into that whole bunch of more stuff, I do want to suggest something. I suggest that you get a piece of paper and a pencil before I start giving you today's lesson, because I need you to have your listening ears on, and I need you listening for the very important year dates that I give you, along with the important event that goes with it. It's going to go along with your assignment for today. So your assignment, if you have not already looked at it, which you should have if you're watching this video, you should have at least read or saw kind of a gist of what you're doing today. So you guys are going to be creating a timeline. Well, not completely creating a timeline, but you're going to be helping with putting the events in the correct order to the correct year's date. Okay. So when you go into the PowerPoint, you will have a page that has the instructions on it and an example of what it needs to look like. And then on the second page, it has the entire timeline of what I'm talking about with you guys today. Now, there are events that are kind of scattered at the bottom in little squares. You're going to take those little squares and you're going to drag them up to the correct years that they belong to. So that's why I would suggest that you guys get a piece of paper and pencil, because you can pause the video and you can listen for the year dates and you can write down and practice, so that way you can get the timeline correct. I would just suggest it because of the fact that there is a whole chunk of information. I'm talking about two wars and the space race. Boom, that's three whole chunks that we got to get through. And the crazy part is all three of these major things happen in pretty much the same time frame. Now, it wasn't like the exact time frame like lined up. It was like one of them kind of started about here, a little after World War II. One of them was kind of stretching out here, but really didn't start till here. And then this one was like, like a, yeah. So we're going to decode that entire chunk today. And I suggest that you take notes so that it can help you with today's assignment. So if you don't already have a piece of paper and a pencil, I suggest you go get it. If not, I have my script and I'm ready to go. So let's get started. All right, we just talked about World War I and World War II. Yes, so we're about in the 1940s on our timeline in our head. We're about in the 1940s. And in the 1940s, I've said this like twice, you should have this written down, I'm just saying. And in the 1940s, there's a country named Korea. Now, Korea was having its own issues, which in history, we know that a lot of places have a lot of issues before anything major starts. That's pretty much how anything goes in history, is there was one small issue and it made one big issue. So Korea, they were having some issues, just some differences. And in the 1940s, Korea decided that it would be best to separate into two parts. There was North Korea and South Korea. Now, in 1945, when World War II truly ended, the Soviet Union, which the Soviet Union and Russia are like intertwined, they're together. I know sometimes it can get confusing because Russia's its own country, and then Soviet Union, we make it sound like it's its own country sometimes, but it's not. It's part of it. It's perfect. It's like, okay. So the Soviet Union, okay, they went to North Korea and they were like, hey, we have a communist government and we think you would like it. So they pitched to them basically what a communist government is. Now, communism, let me explain this. Communism is an economic theory that distributes power evenly amongst the people in the government. Not really how it goes, though. That's what the theory is, but it's not how it actually happens. Now, let me rewind back to the fact that North Korea, they were approached by Soviet Union and then they took on a communist government. So they thought that, okay, we're going to have an equal government playing field and everything's going to be fine. Well, South Korea, they were like, no, we are going to be anti-communism. No. And this is why. Because of the track record that the Soviet Union has with the fact that it's not actually communism and making something equal, it's more so making one way higher than the other. It becomes a dictatorship, is when there's one ruler over all and you have no say about it. So that's kind of the track record that they're showing here. And South Korea was like, no, thank you. I'm good. I'm good. We're just going to mine our beeswax down here. And the U.S. supported that. They were like, good for you. Yes, good decision. Good decision. Now, North Korea didn't like that. They didn't like that. So in 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea to bring the country back to one instead of two, to make it all a communist country. Now, of course, U.S. was like, no, we need to support them. No. So, which is crazy, right? Because all of the wars that we have talked about, the U.S. had to have something happen to them first. But this time we were already like, we were like, we got it. We're going in. We're going in. We got it. So the U.S. troops were able to recapture South Korea from North Korea. They were like, snatch, I got them back. And this was the best part of this was that the U.S. was able to push North Korea all the way up to China. They were like, you know, we're not going to stop here. We're going to help the rest of the country. So they took South Korea back. Okay, so North Korea, South Korea. North Korea had invaded South Korea. I said North Korea invaded. Okay, I don't know. I thought I said South and South. North Korea invaded South Korea. Okay, well, then the U.S. troops, they recaptured it, and then they kept pushing up north, and they got North Korea, and they pushed all the way to China. Okay, so it's literally Korea, but, you know, we're sectioned into north and south, and then China is all right here. Okay, so this didn't make China very happy. They didn't make them happy. So what they did was China, they recaptured North Korea because, well, China was a communist country too. And this just kept making fighting happening back and forth. Okay, here is that one small tidbit of the constant fighting back and forth that we always have in every single war. There was a bunch of fighting in between. Well, now the Korean War ended in 1953. When the current U.S. President, General Dwight Eisenhower, he negotiated a ceasefire with China and North Korea because of the continued fighting back and forth. He negotiated a ceasefire, and that, you know, that made everything just chill. So that happened in 1953. Now, get this. Get this. Remember when I told you it was like a big chunk in the same time frame? Well, while the Korean War was going on, things were starting to brew up for the Vietnam War, okay? So in the Vietnam War, the Vietnam president, he was wanting to cut ties with France, okay? Because France had, so very similar to how Great Britain was in control of America, like America was Great Britain's colony when, you know, we traveled across the ocean. Yeah, I don't know that song. Okay, that's okay. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. So France had, so just like how Great Britain had control of America, France had control of Vietnam. Well, the Vietnam president was wanting to cut ties with France and be like, no, we got it. We good. Well, this was happening during World War II. And then in 1946, so I'm pushing back to 1940. So like I told you that when the Soviet Union came to talk to North Korea in 1945, literally a year later, Vietnam was having issues with France. So in 1946, war broke out between Vietnam and France. Now in 1954, France and Vietnam, they decided that they were just going to divide Vietnam. They were like, you know what, we're just going to do a half split and call it a day. So they divided Vietnam into the communist North Vietnam and the anti-communist South Vietnam. Do you see the theme here? So the U.S., they supported, again, the anti-communist South, which opened them up for attack. So here we go again. We weren't originally in this war. We were just supporting, because we were still having issues. And we just finished having issues with the Korean War. So we're like, we're supporting you because we just had this issue. We support you, but we're not quite ready to send people in yet. Well, you know how it goes where, you know, the U.S., they got ships everywhere because we support, but we don't actually set foot on anything until something happens. And of course, something happened. Well, in 1964, North Vietnam fired torpedoes on an American ship in the Gulf of Tonkin. And this is, again, what pushed America into the war. Yay! Same theme. Woo! All right, so the Vietnam War, it was not very popular at home on U.S. soil. There was constant protesting. Oh, my Lord, it was bad, okay? It was bad. Because people just had so many different mixed feelings about it, and they, as we all do, have the right to protest about it. So they were protesting it. They didn't believe that this was going to be something good for U.S. in the future. Well, then there was people on the other side who were like, but this is something we have to do. We do have to do this. We do have to be a part of this. And there were valid arguments on both sides, and then there were also not valid arguments on both sides. That's just how it goes when it's something this big. There's good and there's bad. And then there's ugly on both. That's just how it goes. Well, this eventually, so all of this tension just at home, okay? We ain't even in Vietnam. We're talking about at home. We had so much tension between two sides, or many more sides than just two. We had so many that this eventually led to no more troops being placed in Vietnam. They were like, okay, we're not going to place anymore because we don't know what is going on and we can't quite figure out which way we need to go because there's so much tension happening. So they were just like, you know what? No more troops, no more. So this eventually led to what was supposed to be peace in 1973, but the peace did not come quite as regularly as we feel that peace does. But peace for the Vietnam War, so the end of it, did not come until 1973. Ooh. So when peace came out in 1973 for the Vietnam War, it subsided things. It made things come to a halt, but it didn't quite solve the problem. It like was basically putting a Band-Aid on it, but there was still like gushing. And while all of this was happening, yes, the space race was also happening in the middle of this. I told y'all it was a big old chunk. I'm telling you, it's all just big chunk. Well, back to the 1940s, and in 1949, Albert, the monkey, the first monkey, was sent on an special American rocket ship into space. Now, this sparked many more major events. Just like how in the USSR, this is also Russia. USSR, Russia. Just think Russia. Okay. The USSR, they sent Sputnik 1. Okay. You probably have heard of Sputnik because it sounds like a potato. But Sputnik 1, it's a Sputnik 1 satellite. Okay. So it wasn't like a rocket ship. It wasn't a spaceship. It wasn't a rocket craft. It wasn't any of that. It was a satellite. The ones that rotate around the Earth, those. Satellite. So Russia, they sent in Sputnik 1. Well, then they sent the space dog Lakita. I think it's Laika, not Lakita, because there's no T. Laika, she was the first, I'm assuming. Laika was the first animal to orbit Earth in Sputnik 2. So there was Sputnik 1, Sputnik 1 satellite, Sputnik 1. Try to say Sputnik about 5 times. Sputnik, and then try to say satellite. Sputnik, satellite. Erase. Okay. Russia sent in Sputnik 1 satellite into the orbit over the Earth. Then they sent Laika, the dog, into Sputnik 2. She was the first animal besides the monkey to go to orbit space. So Albert the monkey, he didn't orbit space. He just like went, he just kind of like, yeah. Laika like actually orbited Earth. Like she was hanging out in the satellite for a while. Now, this was in 1957. Laika was in 1957. Or Sputnik 1, Sputnik 2, that was all around 1957. And in 1959, the US and the Soviets, this was when like they were racing. So when people refer to the space race, this is mostly what we're talking about, is like we were legit racing with Russia on who's going to get the first spacecraft to the moon. Okay, so the Soviets won. They got a spacecraft to the moon. They won. Yeah. Well, in 1966, the US, they sent the first robot spaceship to the moon. The Russians obviously followed along just a couple months later. But the best part was in 1969 when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were the first men on the moon. Oh yeah, best part. So, sorry, all I could hear in my head was one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Best line in history. So, such a good line. All right. So now y'all are seeing what I'm saying was, oh man, I hope you wrote some notes down, and oh man, that was a big chunk, Miss Gonzalez. My goodness, that was in chunk. Yes, it was. Now, I hope you guys were writing notes because now you're going to go and put all these events and yearly dates into a timeline for me. If anything, you guys, just rewatch the video. It's not going to take you too long. Plus, you get to see me a little bit longer. All right, you guys, if you need any questions or you need any clarifications, please let me know. Y'all know my little social studies heart just loves this. I would be happy to re-explain it or explain it differently, however, or whatever you need. I'm happy to help you guys. So if you need me, you know where to find me. All right, you guys, bye.